Hello folks, welcome to F1 Live from the Styrian Grand Prix here in the paddock for the Red Bull Ring. And what a race we had. Lewis Hamilton on an astonishing pole position by 1.2 seconds, and he looked to be in exactly the same form that he was yesterday, today, absolutely dominating the Grand Prix to take his first victory of the season. It was a Mercedes 1-2, but it wasn't quite that simple. Red Bull very much in the mix, and Valtteri Bottas taking that second place right at the end. We're down here live in the paddock. We're going to be speaking to the drivers who contested the race, but it's not just me here. Also, back at home, Rosanna Tennant and Sam Collins will be bringing you updates, looking at all of the interactions and all of the moments that made this race play out the way they did. Rosanna, what a race we had today.
Thanks, Will. Yes, we're in the studio and I'm joined by Sam Collins, F1's analyst. Sam, we've got so much to discuss. What an incredible race. We will get into all of the incidents through the race, but just from a fan's point of view, from an expert point of view, to have two races back-to-back so spectacular, what does this mean for Formula One?
I think it's brilliant. What a fantastic comeback for the sport after all of those months of sort of not doing very much, and to have such a fantastic finish as well. Not an unexpected result, but an unexpected route to that result. I think that was absolutely fantastic, and just those little details of the race and lots of things we're going to be analysing. I think not just tonight, all the way through the next few weeks.
Have you found it hard to pull out the incidents we're going to be analysing today?
Absolutely, because I thought we'd worked it out and had a couple of points, and then we were like, oh no, let's all change. Let's talk about something else.
Well, we'll be back very shortly with some incidents to analyse, but back to you now in the paddock.
It really was a great Grand Prix today. As we've already said, Lewis Hamilton, your race winner from Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen. But those weren't the only results, of course, as we look to the classified results at the end of the Styrian Grand Prix. It was, of course, Lewis Hamilton, your Grand Prix winner, Valtteri Bottas, P2, Max Verstappen, P3. Behind them, Alex Albon, P4, in a great drive for Red Bull Racing. Lando Norris, oh, what a wonderful last couple of laps he had, just pipping Sergio Perez over the line in P6. Then it was Lance Stroll in 7th, Daniel Ricciardo in 8th, Carlos Sainz in 9th, and Danny Kvyat making it 2 points finishes in a row for the Alpha Tauris. Bit of a surprise there. Coming home just outside the points, Kimi Räikkönen in P11, Kevin Magnussen P12, Romain Grosjean in 13th, Antonio Giovinazzi 14th, then Pierre Gasly, George Russell. Really disappointing day for him. Nicholas Latifi in 17th, and 3 retirements. Esteban Ocon, Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel. That, I think, was a big talking point for the race today. Of course, the Ferraris not even making it really past the end of lap 1. And something, guys, that I think you can talk about. Obviously, it was one of the biggest moments of the race. Ferrari making contact, turn 3, lap 1, and that turned the whole race on its head, Rosanna.
It really did, Will, didn't it? And Sam, I mean, I think Leclerc has taken the blame on. We've seen even on social media already, he's saying, I'm so sorry, guys, I've let the team down. You saw it that way as well? That was a real bit of air he got there.
Yeah, he was just a little bit too enthusiastic into that right-hander, and it came to blows very quickly. And against your teammate, that's breaking the golden rule of a racing driver. Don't hit the one that's painted the same colour as yours. But after the whole weekend and the build-up to this weekend, they've lost all of that new data on their new aero package as well. That's a disaster for them. And I don't know, I wouldn't like to be Mattia Binotto right now.
No, definitely not. And there was a chance at one point we thought Charles Leclerc would carry on and it would just be Vettel retiring. But when he came in, we could see that damage on Charles' floor. Was there any way he could have carried on, do you think, once you'd seen that damage?
No, I mean, even before he came in, I would actually nudge the girl sitting next to me in charge of the VTs and said, look, that car will not carry on in this race. The FIA will not allow that to happen.
No, not a good start to the campaign for Ferrari. And as you said, now they've got no information on those upgrades. So what then happens between now and Budapest? Do they bring what they brought here to Hungary, or do they have to start with something different?
No, they've got a bit more. They've got a few days to hurriedly make some parts. A few days to hurriedly make some parts in Maranello and ship them as quickly as possible to Budapest and bolt them on the car. It's a high downforce track, so it's going to be quite a different setup anyway. But let's hope they've sorted out that problem, because that car is not working well. The SF1000 let down the drivers, not Leclerc letting down the team.
Well, it was good to watch, but very bad for the team. Well, back to you, Will, then, to the paddock.
Yeah, it was quite the moment between the two Ferrari drivers. We have one of the drivers with us who finished the race, though, Carlos Sainz. Carlos, starting from a fantastic position, but it didn't seem like McLaren had quite the same pace that you guys did last weekend. How was the race for you today, man?
Disappointing, I must say. You know, after controlling the race in P5 at the first part of the stint, we stopped in lap 32 to control the undercut. I guess then you saw what happened at the pit stop. We lost track position. We exited in a traffic that I wasn't expecting to exit in, and that cost us a race. We destroyed the tire there going through that traffic, and then everyone who started on the mediums and who could go longer just had better tire than me towards the end of the stint and towards the end of the race, and that was it. Just a bad day in the office, but we will recover.
After these first 2 races, though, of this season, how optimistic are you for the package that you've got underneath you at McLaren this season?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think today we saw the true pace of the Renault and the Racing Points, which is quite impressive on the race also. So it will be a very tough battle with them. At the same time, I feel like today should have been an easy P5, you know, with a normal pit stop, the way I was controlling the race, just stay ahead after the pit stop. It should have been fairly easy. So yeah, disappointed, but hopefully we can get back to it in Budapest.
Well done, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show. And from one guy who had an incredible race to another one, Checo, come on in. I've got to ask you to stand in front of the microphone there. Checo, what a drive, man. You had so much pace today. Starting from P17, it could almost have been a podium.
Yeah, I mean, we were so close to P4 there at the end with Albon pushing, giving everything we had, and unfortunately that didn't work. I dive into turn 4 and it didn't work, and I broke my flap, my front wing, and that was a big shame because we should have finished if not 4th, 5th, but anyway, I think the positives are that although we struggled massively yesterday in qualifying, we did a pretty good race.
I got to ask you, the one thing that was astonishing today wasn't just the pace your car had, but how long on the tyres you could go and still have that pace, both on the mediums and the softs. How good is that car in race trim now?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from last weekend, and this weekend we managed to put it together. We did a pretty good race and a very solid one. I think we've shown our pace a bit more. The team did a fantastic strategy, so yeah, very pleased with that.
Well done, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it wasn't the result you wanted today, but phenomenal drive, Checo. Well done. Really, really great job. Right, and from Checo Perez, I really want to bring in this guy very quickly if we can. Zach Brown. We just had your man Carlos on the show. Obviously not the result that he wanted today. Lando, though, that pace at the end. You've had a great opening 2 weekends.
Yeah,
you've got to be happy with how you come out of this.
Very happy with that. Feel bad we didn't have a great pit stop with Carlos, so I think that shuffled him back, but Lando had some outstanding pace, and that was a dramatic last lap finish, which is what Formula One is capable of producing.
Now, you had a podium with Lando last weekend. This weekend he wasn't feeling great. He had chest pains. He didn't even know if he'd make it through to the checkered flag today, but he said he's a fighter. He showed he was a warrior today, didn't he? Fighting all the way to the last lap.
It was great. Never said anything on the radio, so I think he was just fine.
Now look, tell us about the car. Tell us about what prospects you think you've got for this season. Is this a car for all eventualities, for all circuits?
Don't know yet. I don't think we'll know until we get to some other circuits. Clearly you could see the Racing Point there is extremely strong. The Renault's very strong. So I think it's going to be circuit by circuit, weather conditions. But I like our 2 drivers, so I think that's going to be what makes the difference.
And finally, just a word for what's gone on here these last 2 weeks to put on the show, to put on the races here in Austria.
Well, it's been the promoter, FIA, Formula One. I mean, the safety and how much everyone's been paying attention to that. The testing's been great. So, I think it's probably one of the safer places to be inside a Formula One race. So, kudos to everyone, and hopefully we'll continue to have some exciting and healthy races in front of us.
Thanks so much, Zach. We'll see you in a few days. Thanks for coming on, man.
Cheers.
Appreciate it very much. Well, that was quite busy, wasn't it? Great to see all of those guys there. Now, back to the studio. I think we can go now because, as we were talking about there, the guys in the race, obviously McLaren, not quite the race that they would have wanted to have had today, but we were, of course, in the studio earlier talking about that Ferrari incident and how much it affected the race. It was Vettel and Leclerc, but who was to blame? And did the drivers blame each other? Let's hear from them now. First of all, from Sebastian Vettel.
Well, I was fighting 2 other cars. We were already 3 cars into turn 3, and then I was very surprised because I had the inside and I wasn't expecting Charles to try something. So I don't think there was any space, so obviously a big pity, something that we should avoid, but not much that I could have done differently. I was just taking it easy and conservative because it was already very busy. It's a hairpin, it's very tight, and just trying to place my car for the next straight. But by then I realized that I had quite some damage on the car.
So that was Sebastian Vettel's view of the incident itself. What of his teammate, though? What of Charles Leclerc? Will he be full of contrition? Let's hear from him now.
Well, I apologized. Obviously, excuses are not enough in times like this, and I am just disappointed in myself. I've done a very bad job today. I let the team down. I can only be sorry, even though I know it's not enough, and I hope I will learn from this and will come back stronger for the next races. But it's a tough time for the team. We don't need that. The team don't need that, and I put all the efforts of the team in the bin. So I'm very sorry, but it's not enough again.
So Charles really taking responsibility for that moment that took both of the drivers out of the race. Yesterday after qualifying, Mattia Binotto, team principal, said there was a performance that wasn't worthy of the Ferrari name. If qualifying was a disappointment, he's got to be pretty unhappy today. Let's hear from Mattia Binotto, who caught up with us earlier.
I don't think there is much to say to the drivers. It's somehow a pain to conclude a race in such a way after only 2 laps. I think it's the worst conclusion of a very bad weekend somehow, so a difficult weekend for us. I think it's not time to look for responsibility or accuse, it's time to work united. Pretty sure that back home we've got the right people to progress as soon as possible.
Well, 2 weekends to forget for Ferrari, but 2 weekends to remember for Lando Norris. A podium last weekend and today battling all the way to the flag. What a race, what a couple of laps at the end as well, man. Talk us through that last lap, I guess.
Yeah.
Once again, it's all down to that last lap.
It was all down to the last lap. I could see for a good few laps I was coming out the guys ahead. The Stroll and Ricciardo battling, and they were locking up, so I knew I could have a chance come those last 2 laps. But I made the wise decision. I waited. I made my moves when I needed to make them, and yeah, it worked out very well. I think a lot of this was down to the strategy that we played in doing a very long first stint, much longer than I thought I was going to do. But it worked out very nicely, and got some more points on the board. And then I got Sergio, which I wasn't obviously expecting after he had it all coming together with Albon, I think, and ended up 5th. So 8th to 5th. 8, 7, 6, 5. Sorry, I'm doing my maths. 8th to 5th in the last lap, or last 2 laps, was a really nice bonus.
Look, I got to ask you, after qualifying yesterday, you told us how much pain you were in. You didn't think the race today would be easy at all, but as you proved, you were pushing to the last lap. How did you feel today with the high G, with going over the curbs?
It was alright, to be honest. You could try punch me. I'm not going to feel anything right now, so. It was alright. We took a good hour or so warming up and stretching and making sure I'm in the best position possible for the race. It was kind of creeping in a bit towards the last few laps, but at the same time, adrenaline was starting to rise, and adrenaline definitely took over any sort of pain. So I was alright, thanks.
Brilliant start to the season, man. 2 races to be proud of. We'll see you in Hungary in a week's time. Thank you so much. Great stuff, Lando Norris. What a start to the season for that young man. Guys, back to you in the studio, I think. Rosanna and Sam, back to you.
Thanks, Will. Wow, adrenaline taking over the pain there for Lando Norris. What an incredible drive from him, and such competition between him and Stroll and Ricciardo, and that looks like it's going to bubble along throughout the season. What did you make of that drive from Lando Norris?
That whole midfield pack, particularly with the McLarens, it's just constant action. It was brilliant, and that last lap, we just saw it on the screen. It was just absolutely fantastic seeing those cars crossing the line together, more like an oval race than a road course race in Formula 1. It was just absolutely sensational to see. But also, McLaren, what a resurgent team. I mean, it was interesting to hear from Carlos Sainz there saying he was disappointed with the race. He smashed the lap record with a 1:05 at the end of the race. No one really noticed, but that's the second race in a row at this track where McLaren have set the fastest lap. That car's clearly got potential. They just need to bring it a little bit earlier in the race to get better results.
Carlos did seem to have a few little niggles compared to Lando. Do you think they can rectify that with a week out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, these are still very new racing cars. I mean, this is the equivalent of running in Melbourne and Bahrain, you know, right at the start of the year. And now we're at Austria, a tough circuit. Then Hungaroring, another very different circuit, high downforce. How will the cars react there? I think there's a lot to come, but that McLaren is looking really, really promising.
It's so exciting seeing that orange little timing bit on the timing screen and thinking, my goodness, this is McLaren fighting for these top places. Super exciting. Sam, thanks so much. Back to you, Will.
Thanks, Rosanna. Great stuff there. And I think you're right. I think that McLaren is looking phenomenal. I wonder if it will have the pace in Hungary. I wonder by the time we get back to Silverstone and those high-speed circuits like Spa and Monza, what we'll see from it there. But such a promising start to the season for McLaren. A very promising start and a great start for a number of people. Some great debuts, some great drives. Some great drives. Talking about a great drive. I'll take that. Thank you very much. Nice addition to the weekend. Not quite sure what to do with that. I think also the Racing Points have been looking great throughout this weekend. And if only they'd started where they could and should have done, would have been amazing to have seen that result. One guy, though, as we're talking about those Racing Points, who had to hold off a Racing Point for the whole race was Alex Albon. And I think we should be able to hear from him now.
Yeah, I was having Lewis flashbacks. No, it was okay. It was a good race. Lacked a bit of pace, so just need to. This weekend lacked a bit of pace, to be honest. So need to just check what's where to find the time. But we think we know. So I am happy we got fourth. Obviously, good to get some points after last week. And yeah, we'll see.
Good to hear from Alex then, and yeah, I think pretty lucky in the end that maybe Checo lost a little bit of the drive in his tyres. Rosanna, Sam, what are you making of it?
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so we saw Albon at the same spot on the track, turn 4 with Lewis Hamilton last week. That week, of course, he was attacking. He wanted to get the pass done on Lewis Hamilton. This week he was defending against Sergio Perez and still made contact. Who was at fault there between Albon and Perez this time?
I think that was a straight-up racing incident, but Albon needs to be a little bit aware. It's the second time, as you pointed out, that he's on the outside and there's a car he's racing with on the inside. Now, if you're a racing driver, you want to be on the inside generally to go past. It's the shorter route. So it was a little bit of a strange one, but Albon, I feel, must be under enormous pressure, and that incident didn't really help him. He was 30 seconds back on Max Verstappen in an identical car, and that's when you've got the rumours around Sebastian Vettel. Will he go back to Red Bull? You've got Yuri Vips and some of the other young drivers coming up in the Red Bull programme. There's a lot of pressure on Albon for that seat, and he needs to be delivering a lot more than that. And to have two similar incidents late in the race, it's not good for him. But the Racing Points, on the other hand, my word, they are flying. That is a very strong racing car.
And then, of course, Perez with that damage that he sustained from their collision. And that was so disappointing because we'd all enjoyed that charge through the field from the Racing Point. And Perez loved that on the radio when he was talking to his engineer, being like, do you like that? How was that? And we were expecting a little bit more. And, of course, that damage just stopping him from really achieving what he could have. But it does give us a sneaky little insight into what he can achieve this weekend coming up in Hungary. I'm so excited to say we've got another race weekend right on the horizon.
I love these repeated races because you do get to the answers to a lot of these questions. One thing I'm going to say it on air now because I'm hoping they're listening in the gallery, because I'd quite like to see a compilation video of all of those overtakes put together on F1 TV, because that must be brilliant to watch from on board.
Well, there you go. Chalk that one up in the gallery and hopefully we'll be able to have a little look at that. But yeah, so exciting to see Checo Perez being able to charge through, start at 17th and to have such a great race as well with having damage. So, Sam, thank you so much. Back to you, Will. Another great bit of overtaking going on there on track.
Great to hear then from you guys, and welcome back to the track where everything is starting to be packed up and coming to a close. I think we should be able to hear from the top 3 now, if I've got everything right. So let's hear from some of the guys. No, you know what? We're going to have full race results instead. Let's roll the full race results. A day on which Lewis Hamilton, of course, won from Valtteri Bottas at a canter. A beautiful drive from the world champion, with Bottas coming home in second and Max Verstappen in third. Verstappen, of course, with some damage, trying to go for that fast lap at the end, not quite being able to do it. Albon in fourth place, and behind them it was Lando Norris with that brilliant final lap once again, and Sergio Perez with damage, just holding on to P6. Lance Stroll in seventh, and Daniel Ricciardo in eighth. Carlos Sainz ninth, and Danny Kvyat in 10th. Kimi Raikkonen in 11th place, Kevin Magnussen in 12th, Romain Grosjean 13th, Antonio Giovinazzi 15th, Gasly, then Russell, Latifi, Ocon, Leclerc and Vettel, and that fallout will be discussed at length. And so then to the driver standings. It is Valtteri Bottas who stays in charge of the championship standings from Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris in a brilliant P3, Charles Leclerc fourth, then Perez, Verstappen, Sainz, Albon, Gasly and Stroll rounding out the top 10 after the first 2 rounds of the World Championship. Well, what a first 2 races it has been. In the constructors' standings, well, there's only going to be one team at the top, really, isn't there? From 2 wins from 2. Mercedes looking unbeatable in these early rounds. Well, a brilliant start to the season. 2 great races here in Austria. Mercedes, of course, on top of the pile and looking pretty unbeatable. Lewis Hamilton, though, will be delighted with his win. What about Max Verstappen, though? A DNF on the first weekend, a podium on the second. Is that enough for Max Verstappen?
Max, you tried to keep Valtteri at bay. You tried to get between those 2 Mercedes for as long as you possibly could, but it was just too much in the end.
I mean, I pushed as hard as I could to try and stay with Lewis, but yeah, it's not possible. We have some work to do. Yeah, at the end, of course, with Valtteri, I could see him coming, so my tires were pretty dead. So I mean, up until then, for me, it was a really boring race. Just seeing Lewis, of course, pulling away, and I was just trying to do my own pace. So yeah, 1 lap of fighting with Valtteri was cool. But of course, I knew the lap afterwards he was going to pass me anyway. But at least a bit of excitement is good.
Max, I think, has pretty much got to take that as a good result, given the afflictions that the Red Bull has had so far in these 2 early weekends. Is better than a DNF, but he will have wanted a lot more than that. Red Bull were expecting to come into these opening 2 races to win. Everyone assumed that it would suit that Red Bull. So 1 podium, I think probably a lot less than they expected. Now, though, after I think what would be a disappointing race for him on the first weekend, not making it to the podium, of course, with that penalty in the closing laps, Lewis Hamilton making amends here. He was untouchable in qualifying. He was untouchable today. I'm sure he's going to be delighted with the catch-up post-race.
Yeah, I mean, this team is, you know, we've had so much success over these years, and I think the easiest thing is to lose focus, to ease up, and lose determination, I guess. Or I don't see that ever happening in this team. It just doesn't seem to exist with us. And the guys back at the factory are relentless. The guys here continue to be passionate about what they do. So we're so united. And you saw today on the grid when we all took the knee together, and that's showing of Mercedes. We are learning along the way, and they are learning along the way, and being accepting of change. But also when we're talking about the car, they jump straight on it. They don't jump to conclusions. They do great research, and this weekend we've not had any problems, thankfully. And still, there's a long way to go, and it's a challenge for everyone with their cars. But I think this is a step forwards for sure.
A very happy Lewis Hamilton. He's not leading the World Championship, but you just got to feel he's got his mojo back. A great first 2 races here in Austria. I wonder what comes next in Hungary in 1 week's time. Rosanna, Sam, it's set up beautifully, isn't it, after these first 2 races?
It really is, Will. What a cracking 2 races we've been treated to already. It's a sign of things to come, I know it, and how exciting that we meet again in a week's time in Hungary. From us in the studio, it is goodbye and back to you in the paddock.
Thanks so much, Rosanna, and thank you for your insight and input, as always, from both you and Sam. Great stuff. We'll be back in a few days' time. We drive on Monday to the Hungaroring for round 3 of this 2020 Formula One season. Will it be Mercedes in the ascendancy again? Can Red Bull fight back? And how will Ferrari get over this most disappointing of weekends? From us, though, here at the Red Bull Ring from the Styrian Grand Prix, that's your lot. We'll see you next time.